All right, hey everybody. Thanks so much for coming tonight. The first thing I wanted to do was make sure everybody got some food and a drink. The second thing I wanted to do was just make sure that we said thank you so much to Bloomberg Beta, who invited us here and allowed us to host in this awesome space. The third thing I want to do is just thank our panelists for joining us tonight from Atlassian, Honeycomb, Airbnb, and AdRoll. Great companies. And before we get started on the panel, so I'm Scott Smith, and I'll be moderating tonight. And just quickly, I help run our kind of revenue operations at CloudUp. I'm going to introduce Tyler just for a second. He's the CEO and founder of CloudUp.
How's it going? So thanks for coming out. And first off, anyone here in the audience use CloudUp? All right, awesome. Got some users. So we're excited to have you here and looking forward to an engaging discussion around product innovation and where we can all have something to take away from these product leaders at some of the fastest growing companies. You might be wondering, like, why is CloudUp hosting this event? So we power product development teams at companies like Atlassian, Zendesk, MailChimp, allowing you to quickly capture any type of quick video, a screencast, or a GIF.
It's actually not GIF, it's GIF.
Wait. Is it Giphy or Jiffy peanut butter?
Who says GIF and who says GIF?
Yeah, show of hands for GIF.
GIF.
We got only 4 hands here.
All right.
What about
all right. Well.
GIF? How many for GIF?
Yep.
Okay.
Come on, guys.
Well, geez. Okay, so GIFs, GIFs. Okay, so basically we put GIFs and GIFs into your workflow. So in places like Atlassian Jira, Trello, Slack, you can replace text-based communication with quick visuals to get your point across faster, get rid of the typing, and just use a simple visual form. So it could be like a bug report or any type of like product management workflow. So come find us any questions after. But
sweet, thanks, Tyler. Cool. So to start off, let's introduce our panelists today. So let's see. So we've got Charity right here. Charity and I actually worked together at Parse, a company Facebook acquired. And Charity has been on call since age 17, which is a terrifying thought. She's been every sort of systems engineer and manager at Facebook, Parse, Linden Lab, but somehow always ends up responsible for databases. She really likes free software, free speech, and PD single malts. Next is Sri. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Atlassian. Before Atlassian, Sri served as CTO and Senior Vice President of Engineering at Groupon, and previously held senior engineering roles at VMware, Ning, and Sun Microsystems. Next is Kelly. Kelly started her career at DoubleClick for advertisers within Google before moving to AdRoll. She's worked on solutions, product marketing, growth, and product management, and she's currently focused on making AdRoll onboarding so delightful and easy that anyone, including a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, can create a successful ad campaign. And last but not least is Craig. Craig Minoff studied at Yale, began his career with the Boston Consulting Group. Next, he moved to New York City to join a Y Combinator-backed startup called Grouper. He worked on growth and business intelligence, and then moved to San Francisco to join a small unknown company called Airbnb. He currently works on strategy and product management, and he focuses on the core booking model and flow. All right, so let's get started. The first question for the evening I'm going to ask the group is, what's the greatest product challenge? For you, for your team, or in general? Who wants to start?
All right, I can go.
Great.
So at Atlassian, we are a multi-product company, right? So we have a number of products. Is that echoing? Is that okay? We have multiple products in our portfolio. We have Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket. I guess many of you use it. The hardest part as a manager is to decide what not to do, because there's so many options to do. And when you start thinking about a feature, it's like, wow, we could do this, this, and that. And soon it becomes a backlog that's so long that you'll never finish, and you are mired in lots and lots of little weeds. So you need to step back and figure out what you need to do and lots of things that you don't have to do so you can focus on the right stuff.
I'll back up a step and say it's actually the hardest problem is finding users and making them happy. Like, there's a problem of just like eyeballs can only really look at one thing at a time, and there are so many things to look at. How do you make them want to look at yours?
I would agree with what Sri said. It's deciding who your customer is, who your customer isn't, and deciding what to do and what not to do. And what not to do is often the harder part because, you know, at AdRoll we want to be the platform for everybody, but it's hard to build a focused roadmap when you say that. So you really have to sort of bring it in and say, okay, we want to do this for specifically a kind of customer who has, you know, X number of employees whose goal is to do X. Like, this is the job that we're trying to do. And then if the thing doesn't fit into that, then don't prioritize that thing.
I mean, I can't add much more beyond prioritization. That's the #1 name of the game for product management.
So I have a question then for you, Craig. In a hyper-growth company like Airbnb, how do you personally balance new features and products against innovations to existing ones?
Sure. I think the matter of getting eyeballs, fortunately we have a few eyeballs headed our way, but to me it's kind of a question of balance, right? So I think if you imagine a stovetop with multiple pots on the burners, there's some things that take longer to cook, there's some things that are ready in just a few minutes, and to me it's about having a roadmap that has a mixture of big bets and small bets. And you'll get a sense of, during the course of a quarter, you feel like you're making all, you know, copy optimizations or color changes and just moving things around on a page. The team will start to get restless. People will wonder, you know, are we going to take a big bet? But on the flip side, if you spend 3 months working on one home run swing and it falls flat, you'll look back and wonder, we didn't actually make much progress as a team, as a division. And so it's all about having a roadmap that has giant, big bets and bold things at the top, but also a series of, you know, smaller, more moderate wins that you have a little bit more confidence will turn out, and managing that balance throughout the course of a quarter, a year, et cetera.
Well, I feel like prioritizing the things that you already know are on your plate is actually the easy part. It's the dog that didn't bark. Like, as soon as you have user feedback coming in about a thing, that's great. You're in the easy zone, actually. The harder thing is, like, you know, like Steve Jobs famously was like, users don't know what they want, right? And especially, so like, we're so young still that I know that if I just listen to what our users are telling me is what they want, we'll spend all of our time iterating on things we've already shipped. We'll spend, you know, time tweaking. And we have to do this, but we know that there are things that they don't yet know that they want. So, like, that's our harder problem.
So as you guys have built teams out, so Sri, for example, when you were at Groupon, so does anyone know Groupon? Great company, 1,700 employees, or 1,700 under your division,
yes,
right?
10,000 employees.
That's right.
1,700 in my org.
So whenever you had to onboard team members, or your team had to onboard new team members, how did you make sure that they executed against the roadmap that you set out for them?
Yeah, the onboarding part is super important so that they get onboarded right. And this is true, many of the companies have it. Having a mentor is a big step in the first month, right? To make sure that they have the right principles in place, the values, and how teams operate. Having the mentor is one big step that I've done in multiple places, and we do that too at Atlassian. That's #1. Once they are in a team and they're executing, they need to have a clear 90-day plan, right, when they come in. The onboarding and having a clear vision of, as a new person coming in, they can do lots of things, but somebody who's already been there say, these are the 3 things you need to achieve, helps them focus and achieve those, and that's a good start. From there on, it's easier for them to fit in.
You want to give them a lot of small wins really quickly, right? So that they don't just feel like overwhelmed by the sheer enormity of the fire hose that they have to take on.
So Kelly, you've been in roles across 4 different departments, and you've onboarded yourself probably in some of these roles, as well as some team members. What's it been like for you?
The onboarding question. So I would say that I was onboarded onto the product management team like 6-7 months ago, and I came into that team, and there was a pre-established roadmap, and I came into that team guns blazing, saying, we've got to change everything that we're doing, and that was not a good approach to producing the outcomes that I wanted. So I would say in the first 90 days, like the common wisdom is to be a sponge and absorb and understand what the team is doing and why they're doing it. And and I would say when you join a team, you have to earn credibility too. So like when you join a team, you don't just get to change the roadmap. I think so. I learned a lesson sort of in humility there, where it's like, okay, well, there's a plan here. I'm going to help execute on that plan. But then after that, there were things that I believe that we should be doing. And the way to make your case for that is to really have a good grasp of the customer and a really good grasp of the data. And so, you just make your argument with data. Like understand what the metrics are within the app, understand how they tie back into business metrics, and then you make sort of a very data-driven case of like, this is why we should be doing X, Y, and Z.
Jared, you mentioned dogs barking before. So at CloudUp, we often have customers giving feedback too, and it sounds like they're just dogs everywhere. So I guess one of the questions, at CloudUp we're curious about, and I'm sure you guys have the same thing, is how do you balance all these external factors and actually make sure that you're doing the right thing versus the thing that maybe your CEO wants you to do that day versus what you should be doing for that month or the next 90 days? How do you make sure that you stay focused on the big things?
I think it comes down to setting. Is that specifically?
Yeah, I think Craig, you want to go first, and then Charity.
Sure. I think it's a lot about setting clear expectations. I was actually going to answer that to the previous question as well. As best you can, outlining what your plan is, what your rationale is for that plan. I think the more you can communicate that up front, the more you then can point back to it after the fact and say, well, this was our reasoning, this is our logic, this is why we chose this path. To me, a lot of times CEOs or product leads will come to you with a flurry of requests and demands because they saw something in the news or some customer reached out with a complaint. And if you can point them back to a document where you're like, this is our quarterly strategy, this is what we align to, you'll at least have a first line of defense at maintaining your ground and your roadmap. That's not to say you will not still have to do what they ask, but oftentimes it'll give you at least a place to start that conversation.
Awesome. What's it like at Atlassian when you're trying to balance, I think you mentioned you have Bitbucket and Jira and Trello, and you have all these different tools potentially competing against all these other different tools.
Yep.
How do you not get balanced or unbalanced?
Yeah, so our planning process is, as you can imagine, pretty complicated, right? So we have different products. We have 7 or 8 in our cloud side of product portfolio. And then we have a large platform team that ties it all together. So we need to first figure out what to invest in the platform and what to invest in the products. And in each product, we need to figure out what areas to focus on. And even inside a product, you need to worry about whether you go core and just build out the current product or take risks and build out features that are outside your core but then can have huge payoffs. Right? And we use a framework where we use the 80-20, where 80% investment goes into making our products better, the existing products better, and 20% on taking risks. So there's always, every year, we take 20% of resources working on things that may fail, but that's part of being genius, right? So one of them will succeed, and hopefully it'll be huge.
Charity, how have you protected your team from the dogs?
I mean, we just, I think that it's important to not change the big plan too often. I'm hearing what you're saying about the first line of defense against the CEO, and I'm like, yeah, that's valid, that's legit.
Charity's the CEO for a
yes.
company, by the way.
But we've intentionally budgeted, like half of our time right now is spent seeking out the new things. Like we're very early. Half our time is spent, greenfield. Like this is our vision. We're trying to create and dominate a new category that doesn't exist yet, right? So there isn't like a roadmap that we can just follow. At the same time, people are reporting bugs once a month or so, and we do have to respond to those. So we just try and check ourselves. Our interval is every 2 weeks. Our planning is every quarter. Every quarter we decide here are the big things we want to get done, and every 2 weeks we're like, yeah, are we roughly on budget? Or is it time for a technical debt, bug smash week where we all just are like, because you have to give engineers the time to pay down that debt that they know that they're accumulating, or they get antsy and they feel like you're treating them like feature machines, not like engineers who have a craft and also who know that they're going to get bitten in the ass by the shit that they're doing, And so I think it's just about, often it's about getting everything up on the whiteboard so you can see, like your point about saying no to things. Let everybody get everything out that they know needs to be done or what they want to do, so they can see, oh, well, this will take a team of 10 times as many people as we have. And you just start slashing. But that's like a collaborative exercise where you have collectively decided to say no to these things. So you don't get people sneakily trying to do things that are outside the actual roadmap. Does that answer? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have problems with people sneakily doing stuff?
Never.
Don't feed the dogs.
Not that I've noticed.
So Kelly and Craig. So Kelly, if you want to answer this first, and then Craig. Either in your current organization or in the past, when there's been this new great idea that you guys want to come up with, Have you ever created a new team, small group, specifically around this thing and basically abandoned all your previous duties?
Yeah, we actually, so we created a team that was, this was, I guess, 2-3 years ago, and it was called the Growth Team. And it was not, product managers up until this time had been aligned specifically to products, or even actually to like the dashboard, like a front end versus a back end product manager. And we created this team called the Growth Team, and their mandate was to take a step back and look at the product overall, and to also to basically like, to be very creative and to be like, they're kind of like the pirates of AdRoll. Like they were given a long leash by the executives at our team, and there was executive buy-in, and they ran a whole bunch of experiments. And some of them were really big, and some of them were really small. It was like, you know, like some of it was growth hacking within the app, and tooling different data sources to like to enable that stuff. And then other stuff was more larger experiments, like let's build an e-commerce connector to Shopify and make that thing work. And so and then I think part of that too was staffing it with the sort of people the right kind of people. There's a saying in politics. It's like personnel is policy, and I think the spirit behind that is that the people that you hire kind of determines how the team ends up working out. And the people that we staffed that team with were people from startups who had ended up, we acqui-hired them, or they joined, and they had this very very quick pace of running an experiment, doing something, and then either keeping it and tossing it. So yeah, we kind of like built that into the org structure, and this team had the mandate to sort of do experimental stuff. I think where we maybe didn't do so well with that team is that then that team continued to maintain those things, and I think it would have probably been better if we were to do that again. Or if I were like running my own company and we were to do that again, it's like there should be the experimental like pirate ship team doing the things, and then if they're good, we keep them, and then we hand them off to another team to maybe like rebuild completely in a more stable way. And then that team has more time to continue doing experiments rather than sort of like accumulating things that they end up maintaining. Yep.
Greg, any SWAT teams that you've been a part of or seen?
I think we actually have kind of an ongoing SWAT team policy. So there's all the research about, I think the cognitive load for the brain is 7 ± 2, and there's the Bezos like 2 pizza rule. But so the team that I work on is about 15-ish people. And usually at the start of the quarter, we'll have those 1 or 2 big bets I mentioned, and we will pull together a group of around 7-ish people, and it'll be cross-functional. So you'll have designers, engineers, data scientists, research, content, and myself, and engineers. And we will try and basically create a little identity. So we'll have a Slack channel, we'll have a standing meeting, we will have, you know, whatever it takes to feel like we have a coherent group. And then with that foundation of sort of excitement and a charter, we will then push that idea forward with a bit more liberty and freedom to operate than you normally do on like a 2-week cadence. And frankly, even just having blocks of time on your calendar with the same people, I found to be really productive, because rarely in the workday do you get 2-3 straight hours to work on one thing. And especially when you have this cross-functional group coming together, it's really powerful what that group can accomplish in a relatively short period of time. And I like the point around, you know, that shouldn't go on forever. I think it's an exploratory phase. Maybe it's a design sprint for 2-4 weeks. And then that should become sort of reintegrated into your overall product roadmap and move into the execution phase.
Awesome. So Sri and Cherry, this is more for you guys. Have you ever had to abandon your existing code base and completely start from scratch? Sri, if you want to go first, and then Charity.
Yeah, so it's pretty common in many companies, right? So it always happens. You build up debt to a point where it's like, oh shit, right? Rewriting it from scratch is much faster. And there's a point where you have to, it's not like there's a formula for that. I've done both a number of times, and there's also lots of learnings, because if you start rewriting something from scratch, it takes much longer than you expect to get to the same point after a couple of years, and then you've lost those 2 years. So you need to be extremely careful when you are starting to rewrite from scratch. Right? The best thing to do is to recognize that you are piling up debt and start removing the debt on an ongoing basis so that you don't have to rewrite. Right? Strong advice is to avoid the 2-year rewrite, because that's what happens if you start piling up things. So what we did at Groupon too is we had to rewrite the platform, so we peeled out number of services and then got to a point where the monolith is smaller, and that blog is actually pretty popular, redoing the monolith. So we created lots of services, and when it became small, then we rewrote it the smaller portion. And at Atlassian, in the last year, we moved to AWS for various different reasons, and while we are moving, we also re-architected the platform. We ran our own data center before. And then we moved to AWS, and during the process, we also created a number of services, so we are set up much better to scale from here.
Yeah, I mean, you really shouldn't rewrite unless if you have any other option. The most recent time that we did this, it was because we had made a fundamental error with our technology. We had written our API in Ruby, which actually, error is the wrong term. It was probably the right choice at the time, because it let a small team iterate really fast on a small code base. After a while, that code base was not so small, and we had users. We had tens of thousands of mobile apps, and suddenly went, oh shit, threading. Threads don't work in Ruby, which means the parallelism. Like there was, we tried everything to get around rewriting, and then we had to. And the things that I would say are, if you have to rewrite and replace, try very, very, very hard to starve all development on the old code base, or else you're chasing a missing target. Stripe ran into this really badly, and I shouldn't tell their story, so I won't, but let's just say don't do that. They ended up abandoning a rewrite that they had spent years on because they could never catch up to the moving target. And that's hard to do. It's hard to tell your users no, right? But you really have to aggressively move all development to the new one as soon as possible and deprecate old things there.
Great. So that's going to be the end of the panel portion of this. We do have time, though, for a few questions. We have a mic. We actually have 2 mics. So if it gets crazy, we can kind of pass them around really quick. Olivia, though, is going to walk around. So if anybody has a question for anyone on the panel, feel free to ask or raise your hand. One right behind you.
Hi guys, I think anybody could answer, but any tips on hiring, expanding a product team, especially while you're trying to...
Don't hire PMs. Seriously. If you can, always get them from in-house. Someone who already knows the product. You'll have a much better idea of how they think about it. Engineers make great PMs. You can bring from almost any discipline, but like hiring PMs as PMs is a crapshoot.
Any other strong opinions here?
Yeah, see, I think you asked product team, not just product manager, right? Is that, yeah. So I guess make sure you build a balanced team in terms of having the right balance of senior and junior. Right? You want to make sure that you don't just build all junior people, somebody who can mentor junior people. The balance is important. The triad is important to make sure that there's a balance between product manager from inside.
What's a product team?
Product team is an execution team that's working on a product feature.
I don't understand. That's fine.
And product manager needs to be obsessive about customers, right, and users. Right? It can be highly technical, less technical, but the one quality that they need to have is obsessive about customers, and they need to make decisions because that's super important. Otherwise, the team just doesn't work well. Designer, depending on how much user interaction. The team needs to set up the data portion well. The feedback loop is super important. Like whether you do A/B tests or whether you get NPS scores, that feedback loop to make sure that you iteratively make the product better is important. So not just setting up the team, but also set up the systems around it so you can execute better going forward.
Hi, I'm Tina. Nice to meet you. You were talking about onboarding, and I was just wondering, like, for recruiting, there's a lot of time set on, but for the onboarding process, how much time do you set on that? And for how long time do you give a new employee the opportunity to be on board, like getting into the job?
Okay.
Everyone's too scared to answer the question.
I can speak to that a little bit. To me, there's kind of 2 elements to onboarding. There's like the question asking phase when you're learning like acronyms and literally like how your code base works, getting set up with the environment. And then there's also the like conceptual onboarding, which is how does this team fit into the broader picture? What are the priorities of the team, and how can I contribute to that? I'd say the first part, hopefully you can get that done as quickly as possible so that they can become a really valuable member. And the second part, to me, it kind of ebbs and flows, and also comes down a little bit to the person's preferences. But I like to keep a relatively long window of the you can ask any question phase. And the reason being is...
when does that end?
Sure. But I guess my point is, you can, if you put yourself in your Wayback Machine, like on day one or on week one or month one, you don't know a lot about what your team's supposed to be doing or how you can be a big part of it, separate from the functional aspect. And so creating an attitude where it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to ask either stupid questions or questions where the answer may be apparent to most people who've been there a while is totally fine. And I think setting up that culture and making it clear off the bat that that's the expectation and that's okay is really valuable. And I think also, assuming your team continues to grow, kind of creates like this virtuous cycle.
To help with context all the way down, right?
Yeah, to help with that, we have this buddy system. So when somebody comes in, we pair them up so that they know somebody really well, so they can ask questions, right? Even though people have questions, they don't. After the second week, they feel like, oh, I've been here, I shouldn't ask questions. Having that buddy explicitly in the 90-day plan, we explicitly write 90-day plan for every employee coming in to say that's the person you can always go to, and they're there. That's their job to help you. Helps out, just build out that bond.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Great.
Question about eyeballs. How do you get more, if you want more eyeballs, specifically adoption of a product, what's more important? And don't be biased. Product and design or demand generation? Can you have a half-assed product and still succeed? Or does the product have to be perfect?
Oh, God. Have you ever heard of MongoDB?
Yeah.
That is a product that succeeded on the strength of its marketing, keeping the window open long enough for engineering to catch up to the promise, and that took years. I used to crap all over them because of their marketing. In retrospect, I'm like, you know what? That was an amazing job that they did, holding that window of opportunity open long enough.
Yes, at Atlassian, we strongly believe we need to build products that sell itself, because we don't have a sales organization like most other traditional companies of our size, probably the only one. So our strong belief is we need to be super customer focused. We need to have design right. We also bought Trello recently, and Trello has 19 million users when we bought. Now they have 22 million users, and they're growing pretty fast. We don't spend anything on marketing. It's like tiny portion. It's all word of mouth, organic growth.
Great. Well, thank you for the panelists, and also again, Bloomberg Beta for hosting us tonight. There's drinks and food outside, and if you want to ask any other questions, feel free to grab our panelists after we're done. So, have a great evening.
Thank you.